Hello, everybody. Welcome to this practitioner talk in the afternoon. After the lunch break, it's always a bit a challenge, but I'm glad to see that many of you are here. I would like to introduce to you Professor Haiyan Song from Hong Kong Polytechnic University, who will deliver a talk about the topic forecasting tourism demand in Asia Pacific in the era of AI and tourism behavioral changes. So a very timely topic, not only for us as tourism researchers, but also in terms of, say, forecasting researchers in general. Haiyan Song was so kind as to accept the invitation of the Board of Directors of the International Institute of Forecasts upon my suggestion. So many thanks for accepting it, and the floor is all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Uli, for your introduction. And also, good afternoon, everyone. It is last day and probably the last session, but you are here. Actually, I really admire your dedication for this session. Actually, I was invited to talk about Asia-Pacific tourism demand forecasting in the area of AI. But when you listen to my talk, probably you will see we use very little AI in this forecasting exercise. This forecasting system was developed in collaboration with Pacific Asia Travel Association, which commissioned us to carry out tourism demand forecasting for the association, which has about 39 destinations and also over 1,000 industry members. So today I'm going to not present the models that we use in the forecasting, but the strategy, how we actually carry out the forecast and how we manage such forecasting project with a relatively large data set. So, okay. Right, this actually the things I'm going to go through today. Basically, I first set out the context in terms of why we carry out those forecasts based on the strategies that we propose. And basically, we established a three-stage tourism forecasting system for this particular organization. Of course, the system that has been built can be applied to other organizations if you have a relatively large data set and also large forecasting system. And then I will talk about the impact of this project. This morning, actually, we heard a presentation by Eric Wilson. He actually talked about how to integrate academic research with business decisions, right? Currently, most of our academic research actually are focusing on what we call precision-driven forecasting research. But the business actually do not necessarily asking for precision, and they actually asking for how to integrate your forecast into their decision-making system. So I think this is a illustration of how to fill the gap between academic research and also practice. Then I'll draw some conclusions based on the presentation. So basically, PATA, Asia Pacific Visitor Forecast, is aimed to support the decision makings for Asia Pacific tourism recovery, especially during and after COVID-19, because COVID-19 has impacted tourism industry in the region in a profound way, right? We all know that. And also, the significance of this research is that we use advanced tourism forecasting techniques, and we standardize and operationalize the technique that we use. in order to generate forecasts to help business decisions. Some basic data snapshot. As you can see from this chart diagram, the forecast actually covers 39 destinations. If you think about each destination will have at least 30 to 40 key source market, i.e. where the tourism will coming from, right? And therefore, we estimate the models for each destination and the source market pairs. You can think of, you can do the math. Basically, it's over 1,400 models that need to be estimated, right? So, of course, accuracy is still very important. Although academically, we are all driven by accuracy, but in practice, perhaps, in addition to accuracy, they're also asking for something else. So accuracy is very important in our forecasting system. As you can see, at the beginning of the COVID-19, our forecasting accuracy is around 40%, because at that time, all destinations basically are shut down, right? And the tourists cannot travel between countries. So therefore, at that time, when we generate a forecast, it's very difficult, right? So at that time, the error of forecast is around 40% in 2021. By 2024, the accuracy already increased to 2.11%. It's a huge increase in a short period of time. And this actually illustrates how we use advanced forecasting techniques with a view to reducing the forecasting error, especially during the time when during the recovery period, the government and destinations relies very much on the future trend of the demand for their tourism when they make decisions, right? So that's a remarkable achievement. In terms of the impact, we cannot actually write to every organizations and destinations that use our forecast in their decision making for testimonial and verification and so on and so forth. But we do, actually, PATA did write to a number of destinations and also businesses, ask them whether the PATA forecast has benefited them in terms of their decision making. We received some testimonial from China and also from tourism businesses that indicate at least 1.4 billion US dollars, 1.4 billion international US revenue, tourism revenue has been generated in China. Later, I will illustrate how this is realized. And also 240 million US dollars investment has been spent on technology and tourism development purpose by the tourism businesses. And also we reached about 1,500 government and industry practitioners in terms of training them how to use our forecast, and also how to, actually initially we engaged them in terms of, again, the insight that will help our forecasting system. And later I will illustrate how this is done. Okay, so in terms of the project context, we know tourism is highly sensitive to external shocks. And that was evidenced by the COVID-19, how drastic the COVID-19 has affected tourism arrivals in all destinations, not only in Asia Pacific. And also COVID-19 causes structure breaks and data instability. At that time, because all countries are shut down, the economic factors such as income, price, exchange rate, and so on and so forth did not play any role in terms of affecting tourism demand, right? So the data actually are unstable or sometimes useless, the secondary data. This actually make the traditional forecasting ineffective, right? If you still use econometric and time series model, it will not be very effective. So this is the challenges that we are facing at that time. So the objective, in order to solve this data and structure break problem, PATA actually worked with us to develop a robust adaptive forecasting system that cover those destinations and also destination origin pairs, with a view to integrate the forecast with policy and business decision makings. Think about that. During that period, all destinations suffered from loss of tourism revenue, right? They want to actually find out how soon tourism will return and what investment they will have to make in order to attract tourism, what policy they should make in order to attract tourism to the destination during and after COVID-19, right? So that's the first objective. The second objective is to increase the accuracy, because this morning we heard the trust is very important. If your forecasts are not accurate, the organizations, the destinations will know immediately, right? When they compare and contrast the actual arrival and with your forecast. Then they will not trust you. They will not use your forecast in the future. So that's why accuracy is also a driving force in this particular project, right? So we actually combine precision with decision together in the project, which basically is a bridge of academic research and also a practice. In terms of achieve these objectives, we have to build a robust system. And this actually this diagram illustrates how this system was built. Actually, it is a three-stage forecasting system. The principle in building this system is simple. Basically, this morning, when Eric Wilson present his talk, he also mentioned those principles. First is transparency, right? So your model has to be transparent, and your data has to be transparent. The data has to be shared, right? In this way, the trust between you, PATA, and the user will be built, right? And also interpretability is another very important element in this system, because you have to effectively communicate the so-called scientific research and the forecast to the users in the language that they understand, right? You should be able to interpret the forecast in a language they will be able to understand. And also in the system also be able to incorporate some policy and market intelligence, because during the COVID-19, even after the COVID-19, there's a lot of policy changes in different destinations. One example is China, for example. Right after COVID-19, China opened visa-free for 40, 50 countries from Europe, from America and Asia and so on and so forth. Those policies actually were not captured by our model. So we have to build some sort of a system that can, take those intelligence into consideration when we generate a forecast, right? So that is very important. The modeling foundations, because our team, basically is a group of economists, right? So we still believe the causality is very important, i.e. what are the factors that influence the demand for tourism matters, right? As economists, we all know the price, the income of the source market, and also the price of the competing destinations all play a very important role in normal time, but not in the COVID period. So our models, basically, most of our models were built based on the demand theory. So if you look at the diagram later, I will explain the econometric model that we are using. And then the core logic is convert incomplete, highly volatile data into decision-making, forecasting insight. So that's some of the things at the beginning we set out to, those are the things that we will consider in build this forecasting system. Now let's go through the system step by step. Basically, the design that we use, actually we automated the whole system, right? If you consider the number of models that you need to estimate, and also the amount of forecasts that you need to produce, it's a huge system. You cannot do it manually, right? Although we have a team, but we cannot actually estimate all those models and generate forecasts manually. So we have to automate it. So when we automate all these models, then we actually using econometric models. Basically, it's our core foundation of this system to generate the baseline forecast, right? So assuming the business will go as usual, and then what will be the future demand for tourism demand. But if insufficient data are available, then, for example, some destination or source markets do not have income or price data that will be needed for this system, then we use time series models. And at a later stage, we also integrated AI models into the system if the data cannot satisfy the econometric model estimation and forecast. In estimate the econometric model, we have to validate whether the long-run relationship exists among the determinants and the tourism demand, right? So basically using what we call autoregressive distributed lag error correction model. This model actually requires all the variables included in the model should be co-integrated, or in another word, they should be in an equilibrium relationship, right? Otherwise, the model will be misspecified. So we want to make sure that the long-run co-integration relationship exists. So every model will be tested for co-integration. Right, okay, so the second stage, once we estimate the econometric models or time series models, and we generate the baseline forecast. But remember, during the COVID-19 period, those influencing factors probably do not influence the demand too much, right? So the baseline model assuming business as usual. But during COVID, business not as usual, right? There's a lot of uncertainties exist. Then what do? We need to do scenario forecasts based on our baseline forecast. But how do we come up with the scenarios? And later I will explain a little bit more in terms of the stages we went through for generating scenario forecasts. Basically, these are the process that we carry out scenario forecasts. First, we identify the uncertainties or the drivers of those changes. For example, vaccination policy, and also visa policy, and whether the country is closed, completely closed, or partial closed, or largely open, right? Because during that period, different countries have different policies. For example, China and Hong Kong probably is completely closed, right? There's no international tourists in and out at all during that period, or maybe a small number, but not a big number, right? So we actually look at all those factors that will influence tourism demand, treating them as uncertainty drivers. For example, geopolitics, exchange rate movement, public health development, aviation capacity, and so on. So these are the drivers that we consider when we build the scenarios. So after we generate the scenario forecast based on the baseline forecast, then we predict the tourism demand or tourism arrival in each destinations based on 3 scenarios. But those scenario forecasts may not be 100% or completely reliable, because some of the policies that just made before our forecast was generated will still influence the future of tourism demand, right? Then we have to carry out another round of exercise, which is we call expert panel adjustment or a judgmental adjustment, right? So in order to do the expert adjustment, the research team first look at all the forecasts and then see whether there's an unusual result, whether there's some forecast that somehow does not follow the trend that is supposed to follow, right? And then we identify some of those forecasts that need to be adjusted, and then we put those to the expert panels. And these panels actually include academic experts. Mostly they are coming from tourism economics and a forecasting background, and also senior industry practitioners, and also destination aviation, hospitality, distribution companies, right? So we actually draw a number of experts from those sectors. And the principle of adjustment, we ask them only make adjustment when the qualitative factors will influence the forecast, but unknown at that time when we generate our forecast, right? So, i.e., they don't have to adjust every forecast that present to them. Only adjust those based on their background. And they think that something that will happen, or actually already happened, but that will influence the future, but we don't know, right? So only they make this adjustment. All adjustments are documented and consistent across destinations and time horizon, so that we have a clear record what has been adjusted, for what reason those adjustments has been made. The expert adjustment actually is only adjust to the model-based forecast. Expert opinion do not override the model, i.e., they cannot completely change the forecast that has been generated by the model and also by the scenario, right? So they can make the adjustment when appropriate, when they think it is absolutely necessary. All right, so in terms of, you may ask, how do you generate those scenarios? Basically, the scenario generation is a little bit of qualitative exercise. It's not according to models, but it's kind of a qualitative study, a qualitative adjustment. Later, I will tell you, I'll give you an example how this is done. First, we generate counterfeit estimate of visitor arrival using pre-pandemic data, i.e., the baseline forecast, and then calculate the percentage gap between counterfactual estimate and also actual data, because remember, the forecast is updated every quarter, right? So after we generate a forecast, next quarter, the actual data will become available, right? So we can actually calculate the gap between the baseline forecast and also the actual value, right? We can then calculate the gap. And this gap is estimated as a damage done by the pandemic. And then we analyze those gaps together with destinations, visa policy, quarantine policy, and economic conditions. And those are the factors, maybe a few other things, depending on which destination we are talking about, right? We will analyze the gap together with the visa policy, quarantine policy, and economic conditions. And for each origin destination pair, according to their situation, we then develop the severe, medium, and mild scenario, basically 3 scenarios, right? So we are not based on the point forecast generated by model, and then we give them 3 scenarios. And then we calculate independent forecasts for each of those scenarios and calibrate forecast to ensure no intersecting scenarios occur. Because sometimes if you generate 3 scenarios, and then if something happened, and then those scenarios may cross, right, along each other. Therefore, there will be not a scenario anymore, not a 3 scenario anymore. So that's the process that we had carried out. During the COVID-19 period, we use scenario forecast, but pre-COVID and after COVID, actually starting from the end of 2024, we actually did not use scenario forecast. We use what we call point forecast with upper and lower prediction boundaries, basically confidence interval, right? So interval forecast or probability forecast, right? So this actually, so only during the COVID-19 period we used scenario forecast. This just give you examples. Actually, we have 1,000 of those forecasts in each round of exercise. So for example, for Hong Kong, this is a scenario forecast. Right, actually, this is done at the beginning of 2020, which is, COVID just started or just started to spread. And at that time, so we already assume that COVID-19 will have a major impact on all destinations, right? So this actually is the forecast we generated at the end of 2020, or early 2020. As you can see, the 3 scenarios, at that time we call it optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic, but later we changed to mild scenario and severe scenario and so on. But basically the logic is the same. So basically we have the actual data by the end of 2019, and then we assume, based on the optimistic scenario, the COVID-19 will drop by 36% in 2020, right? And then if everything goes wrong, there's a severe lockdown policy, closing all the tourist borders, the borders are closed, and we call it a pessimistic scenario. And we assume there will be 80% drop from 2019 level to 2020. And we also predict when will the tourism arrival will recover to the baseline forecast, right? We said, for example, for the optimistic scenario, we say Q1 2021, it will recover back to the pre-COVID-19. Of course, this is overly optimistic for Hong Kong. Actually, that's why in 2020, 2021, our forecast is only about 40% accuracy at that time, because you never know. You don't know the COVID has such a huge impact. We assume it's another SARS, right? If you are coming from Hong Kong, you know in 2003 there was SARS, and it will recover very quickly. We thought it would be like a SARS at that time. So that's why all our scenarios are actually optimistic at that time. It's not severe at all. So that's okay, because at that time you have to be brave in terms of making your assumptions. But that's okay. We revise this when the new data come back. And this actually is the forecast we generate now. I use Thailand as example. Basically, this is a probability forecast or interval forecast. Basically, we forecast, in the middle is the point forecast, and then we have 2 intervals, confidence intervals. I think this is perhaps 90% intervals, right? Because the data already become available. The pandemic, the influence of pandemic is already dissipated. Probably does not have much role to play anymore. Although there may be persistent for quite a long time, a long period, but then actually using the data, we can relatively confident that we can accurately predict what is going to happen in the future. Although expert judgment still exists if we think our forecast still is a little bit not accurate. Okay, so the strength of this three-stage system is adaptability and also clearly layered, because each stage we define what needs to be done and how to do it, and also is operationally feasible. Actually, if any organizations or businesses, if they are using similar system, probably it can be easily implemented as well. Right. So in terms of methodology, innovation or iteration, as I said earlier, as academics, we also emphasize on the advancement of method, accuracy, and so on and so forth. That's actually is what we do, right? We still actually emphasize on accuracy, but at the same time, we also emphasize on decision making. As you can later, you can see we integrate this very well. But in order to make the system work and efficient, we have to regularly check the reliability of the forecast through exposed forecast evaluation, right? So in this way, we can, refine the system, because this is ongoing forecasting exercise. We can actually continue to refine the system to make it more reliable and accurate. Actually, we call it closed loop logic. Basically, our research will be applied to practice, generate forecasts, and then we do export evaluation. Every year, actually, we do export evaluation to see how accurate our forecasts were for the last year when the new data become available, so that we know if there's a problem, we need to find out where the problem lies. And also, academically, we carry out research in order to resolve this inaccuracy problem. So we form a loop so that the system can continue in the long run, right? So in terms of how this project works, basically, PATA and us are the organization partners. So we work together as a team. They have a chief statistician on the team, and we have 4 faculty members plus a number of students working on the project. Of course, our users will be PATA membership, which I indicated earlier is over 1,000 members, including destinations and also businesses. The forecasting system is embedded into PATA's existing business process to enable a sustained, repeated stakeholder engagement, because PATA is a non-profit organization. They actually collect membership from the members, and they have to provide services to their members, and the members will have to trust and also value the service they receive, right? So if they receive the forecasts which are not very accurate and not very useful, then they probably will not. We will drop out from the organization, right? So that will be a problem. So actually, we work together to achieve the same role, basically transfer academic knowledge to practice. So actually, this is work very well. And in terms of make impact, the first thing you need to communicate your research to the target users. And how this was done is basically through different channels. First, they send the report, forecasting report, to every members when it's published, and then organize online seminars, especially during COVID-19 period. There's no face-to-face meeting, so they organize every quarter a seminar, online webinar to update the new forecast, right? So it's very timely and continuous update, communication of the forecast. And then after the COVID-19, when borders open, there are industry organization organize conferences and workshops, and then we participate and then communicate with them. So this is the engagement. We call it industry engagement. And in terms of the output, basically, we have two reports. One is a full report, consists of 39 destinations and also 140 source market for these 39 destinations. And also, every quarter, we have destination reports, i.e. each destination will have an individual report tailored specifically for that particular destination. Each destination has their own characteristics in terms of tourist resources and also mixture of tourist arrivals, right? So we tailor write the report for each destination. By the way, some of the reports are written by AI, right? If you ask the project, what is AI come to play? Actually, some of the report actually is written by AI. Actually, we code the AI, and then they can read the tables and the figures, right? So, of course, after it is written, we have to check, manually check. So this actually is quite, in the future, will reduce our time in terms of writing the report. And also the publication cycle annual report for the full report, and also individual destination report every quarter. So basically, we write the report in a non-academic language so that everybody can understand. Even people who do not have any forecasting knowledge, they will be able to understand. So that's just the way to go. And so these are actually the webinars that we have carried out. And in terms of operational strengths of this system, we call the low barrier to use, technical insight communicated in non-technical language to reduce adoption costs for government and businesses. High adaptability and strong operation resilience. Actually, I mentioned this earlier, so I'm not going to repeat again. Now I'm going to spend maybe a few minutes on the impact, right? So for this type of forecast, it's very difficult to collect the evidence of impact. They use it, but they do not necessarily tell you, yeah, we use it, we generated how many additional tourists and how much money being generated because we use your forecast, make a decision, right? Government, especially government, they don't do that sort of thing when you ask them, right? Although they use your report. But PATA use its influence, did receive some feedback from a few business members and also destination members. I'm going to actually illustrate some of those impacts. In terms of technical impact, we call it academic impact. Of course, the accuracy has been improved. New methodology has been introduced in the forecasting system. So that's actually is academic contribution. That's put aside. We also generate a policy, business, and industry-wide impact. For example, accuracy from 40% accurate come down to 2%, about 2% accuracy. That's not too bad, right? If you consider such a large, vast system, the mean absolute percentage error is 2%. It's not bad. Although certain destinations, the error may be larger, some others may be smaller, but altogether, the accuracy is 2%. But 2021 is quite high. It's not very accurate, but that's understandable, right? In terms of the policy impact, in the case of China, we actually generate a forecast for every destination based on source market. And they actually can see which destination will grow during the COVID or post-COVID. And therefore, which destination, a source market, they should target in terms of marketing engagement, and also infrastructure development targeted for certain source market, right? According to our forecast, actually, the China Tourism Ministry, they have a research think tank. They told us the government actually, with the help of the forecast, targeted their promotion effort on certain regions, for example, Russia, Mongolia, and Pakistan, plus a few other source markets in Asia, because it shows this source market has a very prominent growth during the COVID and after COVID period. And as a result, there are over 2 million additional tourists from those countries visit China. And also generate approximately $10 billion US dollars based on per capita income or per capita revenue. Actually, this is quite conservative, 5,000 RMB, which is less than 1,000 US dollars per tourist when they visit China. So that's the amount of money was generated because they are targeting those specific markets informed by the research, right? So this is a policy influence. In terms of business influence, we also receive some testimonial from a few businesses like Jewelry Information Technology, which is a smart tourism solution company providing smart tourism solutions to tourist attractions, many tourist attractions. During the COVID-19 period, if you see the downturn of tourism demand, no business would like to invest, but they did, right? So this is actually, they told us, because they trust our forecast. And that's why they made those additional investment, right? Another major company is Huazhu, which is a major hotel chain company, which is now actually ranked, I think it's number 1, number 2 internationally, hotels. During the COVID-19 period, a lot of the business actually retrieved their investment. But Huazhu increased 25% of investment, opened, more hotels, increased the room capacity because, a projection of increase. And TripAdvisor is the same, right? Use our forecast, refocus their marketing effort, and now actually TripAdvisor is one of the largest online company, OTA. So implications, tourism forecast integrated with real-world decision-making, and also uncertainty database scenarios plus expert judgment outperform baseline forecast, that's obvious. And also sustainable tourism forecasting requires government, industry, academic collaboration. So as academic, advice is don't do your research in isolation. You need to engage the industry to demonstrate that your research can benefit tourism. I think with that, I conclude. I think I probably said all about these conclusions. How much time I use? All right. So about right. Okay. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Haiyan, for that great, insightful presentation. And I agree that it's very important to collaborate with government and also with the companies, and not only in these crisis times, but maybe these crisis times have kind of taught us that this is actually quite important. Maybe we would otherwise not have done it as much as we should. I have just a few maybe comments and questions, but maybe first in the audience, is there a question? So I'm going to come with a microphone down to you guys.
Be gentle, huh? I know you have.
I will be very gentle. All right, so I'm most interested. So first of all, great talk. I love everything about this. The way you think about forecasting, making it very practical from industry. This is exactly how we approach it as well. My question is about the adjustment process. So at some point, so you do this, you're adjusting based off of some exogenous information. Makes sense, like a lockdown or a vaccine rollout or something that your model doesn't know yet because the data doesn't exist. But at some point, your model it will be incorporated into your model. And then you're going to have to make another adjustment. How do you quantify how much has already been absorbed by the model? Like how much has been learned versus, what's still left to be adjusted?
Right. So if the models is estimated and the information has already been taken care of by the model, it's already in the model, right? So the adjustment is only done when there's a new information become available, which was not considered in your modeling process, right? For example, new policy announced, visa policy, new visa policy, right? So actually, we only ask the panel member, actually it's a Delphi type of adjustment. It is actually, we go to two stages, two rounds of adjustment by the Delphi panel members. So they only adjust that information they know, which have not been considered in the modeling exercise, right? So yeah, if the model has already taken the information into consideration, generate a forecast, that is already no need to make adjustment. But only those new information become available, which are not in the model, and they only adjust based on that. Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions and comments? I have, if not, I have like just maybe an anecdote, because also at that time we did some Airbnb occupancy forecasting for European countries using AirDNA data. Yeah, this is what we could get. We used, for instance, say the COVID-19 stringency index as a measure to account for this introduced structural break. And we also, we did not have we did not have experts, did not create forecasting scenarios, but we used like Markov switching models to account for the structural break also in addition. And I know there are like many forecasting measures out there, say MAPE, for instance. We also used the mean absolute percentage error among others, but we got down to 23% for the pandemic, so we were doing a bit better than you guys. But it was also like difficult. Anecdote, then I'm done. A bit difficult to sell, because then people would say, "Oh, why are you do forecasting in the first place? This is so bad. The forecast errors measures are so high." But what can you do in the time of the pandemic, right? If you want to forecast for the year 2020, 2021, you also need to be brave, as you said, right? Yeah. So apply the models that are suitable, but of course the errors will not be as nice as in like non-turbulent times.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think during that time, because the tourism industry has suffered, there's a lot of unemployment, redundancy, closure of businesses. They're really anxious about how soon, how quick the recovery will occur. So there's an urgent demand for us to produce forecasts. But in order to produce, we are not actually thinking that, oh yeah, that there's a demand by the industry. Then we predict in a unresponsible manner. Right?
Yes,
you have to have some basic to make the adjustment. So that's why at the beginning our forecast is not that accurate. So because we don't know how long the pandemic will last, right? So we use it as a benchmark. We use actually SARS as benchmark. It was only last for 3 months or 4 months, and then it's gone. So we use that as a benchmark. That's the first part. And later, when the new data coming in, and then we have more data, and then based on this new data and also policy and also lockdown situation and economic situation, then we become more confident in build those scenarios, right? So that's why the accuracy gradually improves.
Exactly. But how could you use at the beginning? How could you know any better at the beginning, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That can be forgiven, right?
Yes, of course, of course. Any other questions? Yes, please, Harrison. Yes, please, go ahead.
All right, so you talk about stakeholder trust and precision and accuracy, and that's kind of how you maintain it. How do you think about stability of the forecast and maintaining stakeholder trust? So basically, how much does the forecast change from running it at time t versus running it at time t+1. Because like in my experience, that's also where you end up losing a lot of faith in the forecast, is if it varies quite a bit every time.
Yeah. We actually update our forecasts every quarter. So that's why when basically every quarter we get one data points, right? So basically, based on that data point, we fit into the model and estimate the model and generate the forecast for next 3 years, basically quarterly forecast for 3 years. But actually, the stakeholders follow those forecasts because we have seminars, webinars, workshops, communicate those forecasts directly to them. And also they receive a destination-specific report. And they actually know the adjustment that you have made, updated. So, and then they can compare with actual tourist arrival in their destination in the past. So if our forecast, more or less same as their actual tourist arrival, of course, the confidence will build up. So that's just the reason why we need to continuously update the forecast and also communicate the forecast to the stakeholders. And through that way, actually the trust is built, right? So why PATA still, after 12 years, involving us in the project, they're still using us. What does that mean? It means they trust us, right? Perhaps their trust is coming from the trust of their members, right? So, yeah.
Okay, good. Many thanks. Many thanks again, Haiyan Song, for that very nice presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So that means we can start into an early coffee break, right? So thank you again for attending. Yes. Okay, almost. Thank you so much.